Hi everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. I hope all of you are having a great new year. So I need to do my December wrap up, and then you're going to be seeing my favorite books of 2024 and my favorite movies of 2024 after this wrap up. So there will be 3 videos in a row that are just recapping some stuff that happened in 2024. So I hope all of you enjoy this. I feel like I should move Steve because I feel like it's really hindering from the aesthetic of this view, but maybe I'll just leave him for the heck of it. So I had this unofficial goal of wanting to read 100 books before the end of the year, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to hit it. I had a massive drop in the amount of books that I read in August and September because my mental health went really bad, and I am doing a lot better now, but I wasn't sure if I'd be able to reach this unofficial goal I had of reading 100 books because of my mental health dropping in the middle of the year and because of how that impacted my reading. However, I calculated it and I was like, if I read 2 short things every day that count as a book on Goodreads for a lot of the days of December, I'll be able to reach this goal of 100 books, and I did it. And that also means that I read a ton of books in December, so this may be the longest wrap up I've ever done. My cat keeps messing with things on my desk. New year, same shenanigans from Hermione. I read 24 books in the month of December, and my average star rating was 3.5 stars, which is a very high average star rating. I think there was only 2 books that I didn't like that I read in the month of December. So some of the series that I read, I will be covering the sequels just very briefly because I don't want it to take too long, but who knows how long this will be because I ramble a lot. So without further ado, let's crack on into this video. The first book that I read in the month of December is Teen Titans Raven. This is by Cami Garcia and Gabrielle Piccolo. So this one is sort of a new take on Raven. It's an origin story for her. So at the start of the story, Raven loses her mom in a tragic accident. She moves in with one of her mom's friends in New Orleans and tries to start over, but some strange and unexplainable things keep happening to her. So she's discovering that something may be different about her. So this is a really great origin story. I really adored these characters. I loved Raven. I loved this version of Raven in particular. This is perhaps one of my favorite versions of Raven that I've ever read. This is the first thing I've read with Raven in it. Media I've absorbed, I'll word it like that, because I've seen some of the Teen Titans cartoons and stuff. I also really loved her foster sister and her adoptive family, and I just love this amazing story and how rich it is with detail and emotion and depth. And so I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read the sequel, which is Teen Titans Beast Boy. So this is the origin story for Beast Boy. So this main character is named Gar, and Gar has always felt like he's been overlooked. He's been smaller than a lot of people his age. He always wants to be popular, but he's never quite popular enough. And so he starts taking on some dares in order to attempt to gain popularity and to gain social status. But things start to go a little awry when some things start happening with his body. So I didn't love this one as much as the first book, mainly because I couldn't connect to Gar and a lot of the other characters in the story. I didn't find them as lovable as the characters in Teen Titans Raven. However, I thought the pacing was wonderful in this story. The pacing in this series is just pure perfection. Even the one that I like least, which I'll be talking about later in this series, it still is perfect pacing. I also thought that there was really great themes in this one, so I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. So then I read the third book in the series, which is Teen Titans Beast Boy Loves Raven. I can't really tell you any synopsis or anything about this one because this one is when the 2 characters from the origin story sort of intersect and meet. That's about as much as I can tell you about it. Obviously they're going to intersect and meet based on the cover. I thought the romance was really sweet in here. There's a lot of chemistry there, and I was worried that it was going to be a little too insta-lovey, but it actually worked really well. Pacing was perfect again. The only thing is I just feel like a lot of the sequels in this series can't compare to Teen Titans Raven, and this one just felt like it was missing that extra little oomph to make it as good as Teen Titans Raven. So because of that, I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, but I'm really happy to see so many of the Titans coming together, and I really am enjoying this series. So then I continued on with shorter ones that I've been reading, and so I ended up reading One Punch Man Volume 8. This series is by One, and the art is by Yuzuki Murata. So basically One Punch Man follows this guy Saitama, and Saitama has basically become overpowered and strong, and so he's really bored with his life, and he's constantly looking for a villain that he can defeat that's actually going to put up a challenge for him, because he's pretty bored with the fact that he only has to use one punch to kill every villain that he's encountered. with this one in particular, I'm glad that there is starting to seem some villains that are overlapping and there's becoming to like more of a unified plot now. It does still feel very repetitive, but I have hope that this series will eventually get a more strong plot that progresses through multiple ones and then it's less of a repetitive one-shot type story situation for each volume. However, this one did feel very repetitive still. It like had the beginnings of something new. My cat just walked over my keyboard. Can you move, girl? I love you though, but sort of using that to help me with the video. So basically, a lot of this series is just Saitama going about his daily life, and then he encounters a villain, and then he defeats it in one punch. And so it's very repetitive, and that's sort of the pattern that the series has taken for nearly every volume. So I'm glad that there's like a villain that's giving potential for this series, but as you will see, I do have some thoughts on how things progress with that. So I ended up giving this volume 4 out of 5 stars. So then I read volume 9 of One Punch Man, and I felt like there's still the villain that's continuing, but I felt like it wasn't reached to its full potential yet because Saitama hasn't encountered the villain yet. It's just like there in the story. And I liked getting to see Sonic in this one, but I feel like Sonic hasn't reached like his full potential yet because I feel like there's so much room still to explore with him. Still pretty repetitive, so I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. And in case you're new to my rating system, so a 5-star means that I love a book. A 4-star means that I really liked it. A 3-star can vary. A 3-star could be I liked it, or it could be it was just okay. And with One Punch Man, when I rate a volume 3 stars, it's sort of in between the okay and the I liked it. I can't really figure out my thoughts on it, but I don't hate it. 2 stars is I didn't like it, and I had no 1 stars this month. So just keep that in mind as I'm giving my ratings for things. And then I read my big chunker for the month, and this is the one that was making me think that like maybe I'm not going to be able to actually achieve my goal, but I did achieve my goal of 100 books. So this one is a brick. So it's Kingdom of Ass by Sarah J. Maas. This is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. So the Throne of Glass series starts off where there's an assassin who's working in some mines as a slave. The prince comes to take her away from the mines one day and says, if you compete in a tournament and win this tournament to become my father's private assassin, then you will gain your freedom eventually. So she takes him up in this offer and enters in a tournament. The series has progressed drastically from there. There is a lot of magic involved in Fae in this series. So it's a series that I've really been enjoying. I think there was only one book in the series that I didn't like, and that was like a collection of novellas that was necessary for background information, but wasn't my favorite. However, Kingdom of Ash, I loved. So I had a lot of mixed feelings on this book at first and how to review it because there is so many slow parts in this book. I mean, when you have a book this long, you're gonna have slow parts. So I struggled a little bit with the pacing at some points. However, everything else about this was amazing. So I love the romance in here and how the romance was blended in with the action. My favorite characters and their romance is Alid and Lorcan. I love seeing the way that they come together and the way that they are able to sort of progress past issues to still find each other. I really think it was really beautifully well done. There's also some other romances that I really love in here. I'm not a huge fan of the main romance in this series. I don't really love the main character with her love interest. However, all of the side romances were amazing. I also really liked how this book flip-flopped my thoughts on a lot of the characters. There's a lot of characters that I previously hated, disliked, or just didn't really care much about, and I began to really care for them when I was reading Kingdom of Ash. I also really liked the parts in Doranel in this book. Those were my favorite parts of this book because I felt like they were so raw with emotion and there was so much beauty to the settings in there. So I really hope that Throne of Glass gets made into a TV series or a movie series someday because I feel like there's so much potential and there's so many things that I want to see on the screen in this series. So I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. So this was like the one like novel that I read this month, you know, but it was a big chunker. So now on to the rest of the ones that I read, which are all graphic novels, mangas, and short stories. So then I continued on with the Teen Titans series. The next one up is Teen Titans Robin. I can't really tell you that much about Teen Titans Robin and what it's about because it's a continuation of the other ones. It's not like a background story for just these 2 boys. So if I were to describe what this book is about in the plot, it would be a huge spoiler. So this one is a filler and a training montage. I know that doesn't work for a lot of people, however, this one felt so comforting and calming to me, and I didn't mind that it was just filler. And normally I hate when a book is just filler, but this one, I honestly don't care. I still loved this one. So the romances in here were super duper cute. There are so many romances that I love in this series. I don't think that there's any romance that I truly hate. I feel like Gar has progressed to a point by this book where I actually really like him, and I love a lot of the other characters too. I love Max, I love Raymond, I love Damien, I love Dick. I just love them all so much, and I love the complicated relationship that these two boys have with their father and how the decisions that a father makes impacts their children. So I love this one, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. So then I finished getting all caught up with the Teen Titans series by reading Teen Titans Starfire. So Starfire is Starfire's origin story, so I can give you some more information about it. So it follows Corey, and Corey is working at this like beach resort with her sister in California, and Corey has EDS. Her and her sister are asked to join this pharmaceutical trial to see if it will help with EDS. However, after she joins the pharmaceutical trial, she starts noticing some powers cropping up. So EDS, in case you don't know, is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I have suspicions that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, especially because I have rib slipping a lot, but I have never been tested, so I could just have symptoms of it but not enough to qualify with it, because when you have like POTS, it increases your chance of having EDS. Like there's a high probability that Corey has POTS because she has Ehlers-Danlos. It would be interesting to see if she ends up having POTS, and it would mean the world to me if she ends up having POTS. However, I doubt that's going to happen in the series. Anyways, enough about the health side of things. So this was my least favorite one in the series so far. I just didn't like a lot of the side characters. They really ruined the story for me, and I felt like a lot of this was shallow. We're getting more just like beach teen girls and popularity contest type stuff, which definitely is a different vibe than the rest of the series. Corey's sister is my least favorite. She is the one that pissed me off the most, and Corey really cares for her sister and wants to do everything to protect her sister, but her sister just isn't willing to listen, and that pissed me off to no end. I also felt like the weird semi-incest relationship thing going on in here was gross. So Corey's sister is dating this guy, and the guy that Corey's sister is dating is the nephew of the guy that Corey's mom is going to get married to soon. It was complicated, not quite incest, but also sort of incest, so it just, things like that in books ick me out, because why do you have to do that? You literally don't have to do stuff like that. It doesn't have to be written in there at all. It did nothing to the story besides just gross me out. There's still a lot that I enjoyed about this one in the series though. I loved Corey as a character. I thought that she was really fun and adorable, and I'm really excited to see her romance and how it progresses. I love that we get to see Cyborg in here. I'm hoping that he gets his own book at some point in this series. He was a character that I wasn't expecting to see until much later in the series. However, I was really excited to see him, and I really loved this version of his character. It's my favorite version of Cyborg that I have seen. I also, of course, loved the pacing, because the pacing in this series is absolute perfection. So I ended up giving Teen Titans Starfire 4 out of 5 stars. So then I read the first 2 graphic novels in the graphic novel versions of Percy Jackson and Olympians, so I'll talk about them one by one. Start off with The Lightning Thief. So this series is by Rick Riordan, in case you don't know, but it was adapted by Robert Venditti. I don't know if I said Robert's name correctly, like his last name. So in case you don't know about this series, which I feel like most people know about it, it follows this boy who is the son of Poseidon, and it follows a bunch of other kiddos who are all descendants of Greek gods. So I love this series. I just am not the biggest fan of the graphic novel version of the series. So we have such a small page count, but there's so much packed in to the original series that it's hard to cut things down for this small page count. So it really rushes through things, and the pacing and stuff feels a little off because it feels really choppy because so much is cut out. So I would recommend this mainly as just like a refresher for the main series. I don't really recommend reading the graphic novels unless you have read the main series, because I feel like the choppiness and stuff isn't really going to work for you. You have to sort of have a sense of the plot and how it's going to progress from reading the main series in order to read the graphic novels, in my opinion. Also, I hate the art. I hate it so much. Let me see if I can find some that I hate. I mean, there's a lot. So the characters look like they're in their like 30s, late 30s, and they're supposed to be like young teens. I'm trying to find a good example of this. Okay, so we have Percy right here. He doesn't look his age. Luke looks really old, and they just don't look pleasant. It's really unpleasant to look at these drawings. It's better than the drawings that were in the Demigod files, for sure, but it's not great. I did still really enjoy it though for being a refresher of the series and for letting me dive back into the Percy Jackson world, so because of that I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. So then I read Sea of Monsters, which is the second book in the Percy Jackson series, and this one definitely showed some signs of improvement from the first one. However, I still had a lot of the same thoughts. I just felt like the artwork was like slightly less bad. I mean, I feel like I can at least like look at Percy now without cringing, you know? And I also felt like it was a little less disjointed and rushed. I felt like the pacing and what they cut and left in is starting to get a little better. Still not great, so because of that I give it 3 out of 5 stars. It was a good refresher. As I said, these graphic novels really work best as refreshers. If they were longer and had better artwork, they'd have so much potential to be amazing. So then I read volume 2 of Death Note. This is by Sugumi Oba. So I read volume 1 earlier this year and I decided to continue on with the series because I loved volume 1. Volume 2 is a lot less action-packed, I will say that, so that did hinder my rating. Oh, and the series is about this boy who discovers a death note and picks up a death note, and with the death note, when you write someone's name in the death note, they will die. And so it's basically this tool to kill whoever he wants and feels is deserving of death without actually using his hands to get involved in the murders directly. So I think that these characters are really intelligent. I think it takes a lot of skill to write these characters and to have them come up with such creative schemes and plots, because Light and Al in particular are geniuses, and it takes a genius to write characters like these. I am not a huge fan of any of these characters just because like I feel like they've all done really bad stuff, so it's hard to like them. However, it is entertaining and interesting to read about them, so I ended up giving this volume 4 out of 5 stars. You will be hearing me talk about Death Note a lot more in the rest of this video because I read a lot more of Death Note as this month progressed. So then I read the first 2 volumes in the Kingdom Hearts 2 series. This series is by Shiro Amano. So Kingdom Hearts, in case you don't know, has 4 different video games on PlayStation, and essentially each of those has had a manga or graphic novel adaptation of it. So this is for the second game. I have never played or interacted with the second game, so I knew nothing about it before reading this book. However, I did still really enjoy this book, or at least fairly much enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that it was like a 4-star. So I really like Roxas. I think he's a really interesting character. Oh, and in case you don't know, these are like original characters that are exploring the Disney universe, and they're in this like sort of dark world, dark universe where they have to like fight evil, but they're in Disney universes, so it's an interesting mix. It's a really fun game series. So I really liked Roxas. I think he is an amazing character, and he's my favorite in this series so far besides the original Disney characters. However, I found this one to be like fairly confusing. It was hard to sort of like follow along with the story. I think that a lot of it was intentional, and I think a lot of it should have been confusing, but I think it went a bit extreme at several points. So I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. So my thoughts on the second volume in the series is pretty similar. The only thing that differs is that I really liked how Roxas's story connected to Sora's story in here. I hope that Roxas's story isn't done because I want to see more of him. However, thoughts are pretty much the same. It's just okay. The games are so much better in game format than in manga format, so I mean, I'm reading them because I like Kingdom Hearts and I just want to check them off my list of series that I've read and stuff, but they're nothing special, so it was a 3-star read. So then I read volume 3 of Death Note, and the thing about volume 3 is by this point in the series I feel like the mind games are getting really repetitive. I was really excited to see Misa in here because I thought that she would really change the vibe of the story and make the mind games less repetitive. However, you'll have to wait to hear my thoughts on the later volumes in this series. But yeah, I thought this one wasn't as good as the first 2, so I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. And also after this one I was like, do I really want to continue with the series? But I was hopeful. I think I'm still going to continue it. Unless I get like 2 in a row that are 2 stars, I'm probably not gonna like stop reading the series. I'm probably just gonna finish it through. So then I ended up reading volume 4 of Death Note. I got the Shonen Jump subscription, so I was reading a lot of manga this month on Shonen Jump. It's a pretty cheap subscription. I canceled Kindle Unlimited and I'm gonna be canceling my YouTube Premium soon, so I think it's gonna be only Shonen Jump that I'm gonna have a subscription for that's gonna continue on a regular basis since it's so cheap. So I wasn't the biggest fan of reading manga on my phone, but I'm gonna get used to it because like these are like 10 bucks each. And Shonen Jump is like $2.99 a month for 100 chapters a day. Say there's like 7 chapters in here. I could read so many volumes in one day. Like, it's not a problem that there's a limit of how many chapters I can read. So Shonen Jump isn't my favorite because I don't like reading them digitally, but it'll help me save a lot of money. So about Misa. I was so excited to see her in the series, especially because she's like a fan favorite. People like cosplay her all the time. However, I was really annoyed by her in volume 4 because she's so easily manipulated by Light. So her relationship with Light is extremely toxic and one that I just do not like and cannot support. There were some things that I did like in this volume though. I loved seeing L's and Light's friendship and how that's progressing, and I also like seeing how Shingami can die. So I liked those parts of it. But I mean, it was just an okay volume, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I'm getting a little confused on the ordering that I read the manga, so I'm sorry if I mess up the ordering that I read the manga that I read for the end of the month. So with Goodreads, when you log multiple books that you've read in one day, it can mess up the order a lot, and it was messing up the order a lot on my read shelf. So I'm not 100% sure about the order of the things, but it appears that I may have read 3 manga in one day. Don't really remember though. Okay, so as I was saying about the order getting mixed up, for some reason it says next that I read 4 One Punch Man volumes in a row, but I think I read actually volume 10, volume 11 of One Punch, and then I read those Death Note volumes, the last 2 that I talked about, and then I think I read more One Punch, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm gonna just be talking about all the books that I've read this in December, so it doesn't really matter the order. I mean, it matters to me, but Goodreads is messing up right now. So this was the next one that I read. I read One Punch Man volume 10. So volume 10, I mean, I'm glad that we're still seeing this villain that's spanning multiple volumes. I love the moments that we got in here of Saitama and Genos, although it could have been a lot more moments with them. I'm not a fan of Saitama being on like a silly side quest. I want him to be connected to the main story more. Also, I am not a fan of the fact that there's a lot of fan service in here. So there's like 2 female characters that there's a lot of fan service in here, and they're not even main characters in this volume. They're in like the side stories. And the side stories are just like added additional stories, but there's artwork that's between chapters. I'm gonna find one that isn't fan service because I'm not really comfortable showing that on here, but I want to show an example of like what between the chapters artwork is. So there's between the chapters artworks is just silly goofy things. Most of them is these 2 female characters in very sexualized positions, which is very much fan service, which I'm not a fan of. I hate fan service in manga and anime. It is my least favorite thing about manga and anime. But it did have some great humor in this volume, and I did like the side stories, the bonus stories at the end, so I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read volume 11 on the Shonen Jump app, and I found volume 11 to be the weakest volume that I've read in the series so far. So it's a lot of just like non-stop these like side character heroes are dealing with tons of new villains, so you're getting tons of introductions of new heroes plus tons of introductions of villains, but you're not really spending a lot of time with them to get to know each of them very well. It's just a lot of just like action battle non-stop. I mean, mostly Thomas just on this goofy little side quest, and I really want him to be connected back to the main story because the goofy little side quest, well, it works for 1 volume or 2 volumes. It just stretched on too far. It stretches on farther after this volume. I also felt uncomfortable with Monster Princess Super S. I was making sure that I was reading her name correctly. She was just like so hypersexualized, and I was really uncomfortable with her outfit and what she was wearing, especially because One Punch Man is a fairly kid-friendly series, so to have a random villain that is so hypersexualized and inappropriate makes me really uncomfortable. If this was a series that was always that level of sexualized, like, it would make a lot more sense because kids wouldn't have started reading this series in the first place. But I worry that kids will start reading this series and then be like, oh, what is this character? What is these features of her outfit? How do these features work? Don't want to get into that more because I'm not super comfortable talking about it. The only saving grace for this volume really for me was the bonus story, so I ended up giving this volume 3 out of 5 stars, and I've been considering a lot whether I should even continue with One Punch Man, but I think until I get a volume that I truly don't like, I'm going to continue with it. So a lot of my thoughts for volume 12 are the same. I almost gave it 2 stars. However, I felt like the pacing of volume 12 worked really well. So it's a lot of just like random heroes and random villains fighting, and then Saitama on this goofy side quest. Basically the same as the last volume. Almost gave it 2 stars. Ended up giving it 3 stars though because of the pacing. So with volume 13, Saitama is still on his goofy little side quest, but you get to see him like fighting on his goofy little side quest, and I really enjoyed getting to see his fights. And also, Saitama's sort of like out of the picture by this time, but the events of his goofy little side quest after Saitama leaves intersects with the increase of villains that you've been seeing in the previous volume, so I liked seeing the interconnectedness, but Saitama needs to be interconnected in that as well. So I thought this one was like a bit better than the previous volumes, but still not great, so I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Death Note Volume 5, which was my least favorite book that I read in the month of December, so Volume 5 just was drastically downhill for me. So by this point in the story has changed scope. It's less about Light and L and this mental games battle that they're having, and it's less about the morality of using the Death Note, which was something that really appealed to me in the first volume, and it's more about corrupt businessmen and what they're doing to advance their careers and advance their company, which I'm not a fan of. I also find Misa to be extremely annoying. So she just has no personality besides loving Light. She's very, very annoying. I can't stand her. Every scene that she's in, I absolutely hate. So I ended up giving this volume 2 out of 5 stars, and it was my least favorite that I read this month, as I already said. And I almost considered stopping, but I was like, I need to reach 100 books read, so I'm gonna read one more in this series. And then if that one's also a 2-star or a 1-star, I was gonna quit this series. However, the next one ended up being a 3-star. The reason it ended up being a 3-star is because in the last 50% of this volume, it got a lot more action-packed and interesting, and Misa actually started taking actions to progress the plot, which I was grateful for. I still find her really annoying, but she was progressing the plot and there was action, which I really liked. I think there's a potential for the next volume to become more of what I really liked originally in this series. I also feel like Light at this point in the series has absolutely no personality. He's very bland and boring. So this volume was lackluster, but it was better than the previous volume, which is why I gave it 3 stars and chose to continue on with the series. I didn't read more of the series in December. However, in 2025, I will be continuing with this series. I'm now also halfway through this series, and it's only a 12-volume series, so I might just like push through and finish, even if I don't end up liking the rest of it. I don't know. I'm still sort of really torn on what I should do with this series. Then I read my favorite book of the month, which is a really sweet and adorable book, and this is a manga. It's called Until I Meet My Husband. It's a true story by Ryozaki Nanasaki, and the art is by Yoshi Tsukisuki. I'm not sure if I said those authors' names correctly. So essentially there was a memoir by this guy who was the first guy to have a gay marriage in Japan, and it's his exploration of his identity growing up through the years and experiencing the sadness and joy of first loves. So it's a really cute and adorable story, and I really, really love it. I love the artwork. I thought the artwork was gorgeous, and it really added to the story and made the story so wonderful. Let me pull up an example of the artwork. Just like, I love the way these characters are drawn. They're drawn so beautifully. I absolutely adored them. I thought there was a lot of great themes in here as well. I do think there was one part though that was overlooked a little bit that could have been explored deeper. I think it's important to have that part in there because it shows how young gay men can be taken advantage of when they are first exploring their identity. So I think it's important to include. I just don't think it was like covered in enough detail. However, I still really enjoyed this manga. I gave it 5 stars. Favorite book of December. And then I read a short story which is called Gracie's Hot Crush. It's by Michelle Dalton. So I have this one on iBooks. I don't know how I got it free. I have it free. It was on my phone. It was probably like I got it from an author newsletter or something. So it follows Gracie and Murray, and Gracie and Murray are in South Africa and they're working to stop poaching. And one day the trackers that they have on one of their animals, I forget what animal it is, I want to say it's like an elephant or a rhino. Anyways, the trackers just stop working and they're like, oh, we gotta go investigate this and figure out what's going on, and they get caught up in a scheme and figure out who is involved in the poaching in the area. There's some romance involved in there, as you'd think from the title. I just wouldn't say that this one is anything special. I found that the writing style was very simplistic and bland, and I felt like the author could never do the perfect blend of descriptions and action and dialogue. Like, there was so many sections where it'd be like description heavy and it just felt like way overdone, then dialogue heavy, the dialogue was overdone, then action heavy. I feel like that it never reached the perfect blend, and it felt like a very beginner writing style, which I hate to say, but it does feel like that, and it hindered from my enjoyment of this story drastically. I also felt like Gracie and Murray were both like stereotypical romance characters that you find in any romance book or any romance movie. So Murray was a typical like hot guy, and Gracie was the typical like, I have low self-esteem, no guy could like me type of girl. So it's very much things that I've read before. So I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it could have been a lot worse, but it was nothing special. I'm just glad that it was so short so that I could be done with it so quickly. Then the final book I read in 2024 was A Quick and Easy Guide to Asexuality by Molly Muldoon and Will Hernandez. So in case you don't know, Molly Muldoon is my kindergarten teacher's daughter, which I think is super cool. So this is written by 2 ace people who are talking about asexuality, teaching about it, sharing a little bit about their experiences with it, and starting some conversations about asexuality. I thought this was done really well. It's really short and it's very basic. So if you're ace and you know your identity very well, or if you know a lot about the ace community, a lot of this stuff will seem like just a refresher for you. However, I think that this is a book that will really help a lot of teens in particular. This is a book that I wish I had when I was a teen. I was reading the reviews and some people were complaining about the last part of the book because they started a discussion about whether ace people belong in the LGBTQ+ community or not. And the thing is, I have a lot of strong thoughts on that. Like, theoretically and hypothetically, we belong in the community, but because we're so ostracized from the community because of our own internalized acephobia or queerphobia, however you want to word it. We oftentimes don't feel comfortable associating with the LGBTQ plus community and like calling ourselves a member of the community. And I think also a lot of LGBTQ plus people, especially online, try and exclude us from the community. So it's a complicated discussion because yes, we do belong to the LGBTQ plus community, but because of so many different factors, a lot of us don't feel like we fully belong in the community. So I don't agree with everyone else who's like 1-starring and 2-starring this book just because of that single page in this book. But if you want to learn more about asexuality, or if you simply need a refresher, or if you want to read a book that makes you feel like as an ace person you're accepted and you're valid, then this is definitely one to read. It's in graphic novel format with some super fun artwork. I ended up giving this one 5 out of 5 stars. This is actually a series, the Quick and Easy Guide series. There's some other ones on other queer topics. I haven't read those other ones yet. This was the first one I've read in the series. So those were all the books that I read in the final month of 2024. I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. As I said earlier, there will be my favorite movies of 2024 and my favorite books of 2024 coming out soon, just to sort of like recap the year and focus on the positives in the year. 2024 was a really rough year for me. It was one of the hardest years of my life and definitely had a bit of my mental health going to an extreme that it hasn't been on since I was a young teen. So it was a really hard year for me, but I've made it through, I've stuck it through, and I'm just so grateful for the friends that have stuck with me and that have been so kind to me in 2024, and I can't wait to have more fun memories with friends in 2025. So I hope all of you are having a great start to your new year, and I will see all of you in my next video. Until next time, goodbye.